So my name is Rick Kraus, and I was a fellow from 2008 to 2012 when it was much easier to become a fellow, so congratulations. I graduated in 2013. I went to Livermore as a Lawrence postdoctoral fellow. At that time, it was actually much easier to get a clearance, so it took me about 4 months to get a clearance. I found out that, this is really what I like to do, and this is where I wanted to be, so I was able to get converted to research scientist in 2014. For the past 3 years, I've been doing a number of things at the lab, and they've all been really exciting and fun. I spend a good fair amount of my time working at the National Ignition Facility, where I'm PI and designer for a discovery science campaign. We're working with Russ Hemley and Ron Cohen to look at the habitability of exoplanets. So we're studying the iron melting curve to ask the question, can exoplanets have a magnetosphere and then potentially habitable surface environment? I'm also working in some of our high energy density campaigns, trying to address the question about the equagenous state and warm dense matter properties of materials that the labs care about most. The past couple years, I've been working a little bit more in our Global Security Directorate, working in the area of counterterrorism and non-proliferation, which has actually been extremely exciting and fun to do, which has been very different from my background previously. So with this introduction, I am not a federal program manager. They asked me to give this introduction to the NNSA and the NNSA welcome to give you a slightly different perspective from the previous, much more illustrious speakers who've introduced and welcomed you here today. So with that, why have they done that? Because I think I've definitely sat in the same place that you have today, and I've heard the welcome speeches. And the welcome speeches have been great. They're really wonderful speakers. They don't use slides. But I sat there and I was always intimidated, I think, because they're in charge of so much money and so much of the research directions that we do at the lab. And I looked and I said, I don't want to make a bad impression or affect my future career. However, in the past couple years at the lab, this has changed. My opinion of them has changed. As I work with them actually much more closely now. I work with individuals from NA-10, which is defense programs, NA-20, which is defense, nuclear, non-proliferation, and NA-80, which is counterterrorism and non-proliferation. Did I get that right, Kim? Thank you. These interactions have actually varied tremendously, from giving technical talks on our recent NIF shots, going to headquarters and saying, this is the data we've taken, it's really exciting, and this is where we're going in the future. Planning workshops and making sure these workshops are sort of cohesive with what NNSA's pictures and our pictures are combined should be for the future. Strategic planning documents, working very closely with headquarters staff on what our future research plans should be for a specific program. And then also program reviews. Sort of every quarter we get reviewed and we talk to them and interact and make sure that our sort of research directions are co-aligned. And then finally, if you're working on a really big, expensive project, you are definitely going to be interacting with headquarters staff as when they're relatively expensive experiments, they want to make sure that they're going in the right direction. So these experiences, again, have changed how I look at headquarters staff. From this person that's holding the purse strings to a facilitator. They are trying to help us get the funding we need to do the right science to solve our largest problems. And so if you look at it that way, the headquarters staff are, it's really empowering as you feel like the relationship is like, interacting. You're interacting with the facilitator to help you out. And that's been very helpful in how I think about those relationships. So with that new perspective of the NNSA, which you may have, or I hope you'll have, I'd like to change how you think about this fellowship. Right? So on the website, and it's a wonderful website, no doubt, but there's a statement about what this fellowship is about. It's about bringing, the trained scientists vital to meeting U.S. needs for advanced science and engineering, right? So it gives you this picture that you're part of this big group, and we're going to bring up this big group. But I think it's really about you as individuals. We want you and develop your capabilities to make sure that you or your future students can potentially work at the labs and solve some of our biggest problems. And you can think of that as a duty, and if that appeals to you, fantastic. Or you can think of it as an opportunity. We build tremendous hundreds of $1 million facilities, $1 billion class facilities to solve our largest problems. So it's the Z machine, which you saw 2 days ago, or the NIF, where you've probably potentially seen before, maybe next year. So these problems are really exciting and fun to work on as well. Right. So at the end, speakers always tell you how amazing you are, but I was a fellow, so I'm not going to do that. But I will say that the skills that you have, that you were chosen because you were developing, are vital to the future of the NNSA and the NNSA missions. That is undoubtedly true. And you are capable of making a difference in national security. And I know that because in only 3 years I've been at the lab, I felt like I've made a difference. And that has been incredibly rewarding to me personally, while doing fun science as well. So the other thing is that this fellowship does give you an inside track. The people that you're meeting, the folks that you're working with from NNSA or the labs, ask them questions, and they'll give you an inside track to figuring out what the major problems are, and therefore you're a step ahead in solving those problems. So with that, I'd like to welcome you to the SSGF program review, but please use it as a resource for you and your future careers. Thank you.